some basic fantastic thank you, Maury. Fantastic news, political news on the political side. They basically were able to let's say get rid of Osama bin Laden, and good riddance for that. And we should be expecting that this would be fantastic political news, and we were hoping to see some reaction, if you will, like Kevin was asking, on the dollar and on the other markets per se. And as of now, there isn't really too much of a positive reaction. I mean, this is the Australian dollar. We have just a kind of a pause. We're sitting at all-time high. I mean, the reaction, if this is the reaction to the bin Laden assassination, it's basically nothing. If you look at the British pound, you can see that it's slightly weaker, or selling off slightly a little bit more. And there is something I'm going to point out for you on the British pound, but we're just trying to see the reaction for the bin Laden. Also, the Canadian is giving us some move. The euro is not weakening at all. On the contrary, the euro is strengthening on a weekly base with regards to the assassination. So it is having no effect on the dollar euro in any way, and actually it's having a positive euro effect. The yen, that is the one that is weakening. So you can see that this weakening here in the yen is much bigger than the weakening we had in the British pound. Let me show you the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc is slightly weakening. If we look at, and I'm just trying to find the impact of the news, I'm not doing the hierarchy yet, and I'm just trying to find the impact of the news. If you look at crude oil, this one actually sold off quite well in the overnight session, but it's coming back in the late. Gold, quite a muted reaction. I mean, we had a little initial jerk off, or an initial knee jerk kind of a reaction to the downside, but it's still rather positive. It's turning positive. Silver, that's the one that really had a big push to the downside, and that is more long liquidation or profit taking than anything else. This is not a trend change even in the silver. It seems that everything had an initial positive dollar base positive knee-jerk reaction, and then I think now the common sense is prevailing, and I guess they are anticipating some sort of a reaction. I think we still have some ways to go for the silver. I mean, if you remember, I mean, this is one of the things that we did in the silver session when we were doing the long-term session that you're asking for, Fabio. And whenever you have a base like this, like the one we are highlighting here for you, this is part of the things we identify when we have such a big base like this, then usually the reaction to the upside, well, it depends. Everybody looks at it as a consolidation, but in the way we look at it, it is actually something that tells us how extended the move will be. So basically, the bigger the base, the higher into space, as we say. And of course, you see the move to the upside, and this is why we say the bigger the base. So this is part of the techniques that we do in the long-term course, and we might have a small pause, but there is no any real trend change. On the contrary, we should be looking for the silver to continue higher. So with that, having said that, just looking at this, we can see that there is no real change as a result to the assassination of bin Laden. So the dollar, as you can see, look at the dollar, it is still extremely weak. This is the daily dollar. It is beginning to gather strength, but nothing significant. It's still short. It says it's still short at the all-time low. If you look at the Australian dollar, again, all-time high. It is by far the strongest. If you look at the euro, this is the only one that it is positive, if you will. So if I'm going to compare strength, the Australian dollar is at an all-time high, but it is kind of fading because, as you can see here, that it is slightly negative on the week versus the euro, which is actually still positive. So both of them are extremely strong, but which is stronger, the euro or the Aussie? Well, in this case, based on what we're seeing, the Australian dollar is the euro dollar should be actually gathering more strength than the Aussie. If you look at the British pound, it is slightly, and I say ever so slightly, pausing. It is not a trend change. On the contrary, it's still we're looking for a continuation to the upside, but there is more weaker, if you will, than it's. If I'm looking at anything that's going to sell off, that's one of the first ones I'll be looking at selling it off. And the same thing with the Japanese yen. So we have to accept the fact today that the euro, the US dollar, is in a bear market, and we are sitting at an all-time low. We do not have any trend change, no buy signal, nothing. So under normal circumstances, we should be shorting the dollar and buying the Aussie, buying the euro, and then buying the Swiss franc, because as you see, there is a minor selling. This weakness in the Swiss franc is pretty much the same as the weakness that you can see in the Australian dollar. Nothing. There is absolutely very minor movement. So I would say the Australian is strong, the Swiss is strong. The ones that are really selling off or giving us more leeway is the Japanese yen and the British pound. And actually the yen is a little bit more than the British pound. The Canadian is also giving us some selling off, but this will be much more directly related to the crude oil. So in this respect, the way we're going to approach the market today, we are still going to keep our own hierarchy by still realizing that the dollar is in a bear market, and they are still looking to weaken the dollar, because as you can see, the S&P, for example, is back at 1366 or 1370, which is way back. It has made back all the decline that it has lost since 2007. This was the breaking point in 2007, which was 1368. That was the breaking point. We are now trading at 1366. So we have retraced all the way back to the initial breaking point in the collapse, if you will, of the 2007 and 2008. If you look at the Dow Jones, we're actually surpassed by far the break of 2007. The break was 1162. We are back to the first structural point, which was, this is the one that I have identified in November 2007, which is around 12,000 right there. That is, we are already back above it, and that tells you that why in particular they are so interested in having the US dollar that weak, because having the US dollar weak, it allows people to find that the US asset-based investments are fairly cheap. They can buy more. They can buy more of Apple, more of this, and they can buy more from a mature economy. They can also all the US companies today, 76% of, or close to 80% of all the S&P 500 companies have reported last week much higher earnings and raised their estimates for the next quarter, their profit estimates, and all of this because is that they are able to export more because of the weakness that we have in the US dollar. So the US dollar now has become so inexpensive that it is encouraging a lot of exports. It's also allowing people to invest in the US stock market, and as you well know, the Dow Jones and the S&P, they are not just stock indices. They have another function, and this is a very important function, which is basically unique function related to the Dow Jones in particular and the S&P. It is the barometer of the psychology of the American consumer. Exactly, Sergey, you took the words out of my mouth. Everybody in the United States, every consumer, the United States is a consumer economy. It's a consumer-based economy. It actually consumes, lives on itself. It consumes 70% of what it produces. And in order for the consumer to be optimistic, to be willing to take out of his saving, to find disposable income, to actually go and reinvest in the market or buy the additional goods and services that they need or whatever, the way they gauge that psychology, if you will, is by the Dow Jones and the S&P, and therefore having this is actually one of the signs of actually that the US economy would be or should be turning around, because now if the US consumer comes behind this wave that you see up there, that will create another, what you can call now, a positive economic tsunami in the United States, because everybody now is going to be turning positive. There wouldn't be those defaults. Everybody's buying. Everybody has an optimistic view of the future, and again, it might be the point where it will take out the US economy out of its cycle, because now you have 315 million consumers are turning positive. They are willing to buy, and that is a tremendous buying power and a tremendous amount of demand coming into the market, and therefore that might be the reason why they are so happy, or they're trying to keep the dollar that weak. So having said that, let's go back to our trading week. We were still going to now define the hierarchy. As you see now, the dollar is doing nothing based on the positive news, so we should be still looking for a continuation to the downside. I don't have on a daily chart, as far as I don't really have any buy signal as of yet on the US dollar. On the Aussie, we're just having a minor pause. I really don't have either a sell signal, so the Aussie is strong. The Euro is stronger, so the strongest pair that I have now is the Euro, so the first choice to buy is the Euro. The second choice to buy is the Australian dollar. The third buying that I would be looking at buying, where I don't have a sell signal, all what I have is a pause, is the Swiss franc. And then the ones that are weakening, the one that is weakening, slightly weakening, is the British pound, the decline, the pullback, and there is something I will show you in the dollar pound separately. But this is quite a candidate. It's not yet a sell signal, but it's a prime candidate to become a sell signal. And then we have the weakest of the currencies so far, which is the yen. So if I'm going to set up the hierarchy would be, let me change the color. The hierarchy would be the strongest is the Euro, and then at the same level of strength would be the Aussie. Then we're going to look at the weakest. So the weakest currency so far is the US dollar. That's the weakest. Then we have the Japanese yen. Then we have the British pound. And probably pretty much the Canadian. Now the one thing I just want to, so if I'm looking now, I'll be looking at buying the Euro pound, buying the Aussie pound. I might be going long the dollar yen. I might be going long the dollar pound. and I might be looking at probably the yen pairs as a whole, because if the dollar yen now is going to be a player, then this means I can be looking at taking the Aussie dollar, and I can be looking at taking the euro yen, the Aussie yen and the euro yen, and of course the pound yen might be one of the ones that yes, I will be looking at taking the dollar yen long. Okay, so basically that's the hierarchy. The strongest currency, as I said, is the euro. The second is the Australian, and then the weakest of all is the dollar, then the yen, then the British pound, and then the CAD. Now, one piece of warning I want to mention to you: the Swiss, yes, the Swiss is strong. I'm sorry, the Swiss franc is strong. And I will show you why it's strong, because it hasn't sold off at all. It was pretty much the same, as you can see, the same, sitting right at the top highs, pretty much the same as the Australian and the Aussie. But so what we are going to do, exactly all-time high, what we have to do, guys, is this. Now we do have a political event, which is the Bin Laden capture and death. We're also coming up from a 2-week European holiday. Friday was the royal wedding, so the whole world, or the majority of the world, has been on vacation. They have not been serious participants in the market, which is not by any means, if the wouldn't move the market would move if there was something to make it move. But having said that, what's going to happen is that first thing tomorrow morning, everybody's going to be back at his or her offices, and now they are going to be making decisions on their so we might get a profit taking on the shorts with regards to the dollar, and we can get some reversals. So in that case, we're going to also identify serious entry points if we are going to decide to go long the dollar versus all the other currencies. Okay, so that is the hierarchy as I explained. And now let me save this, and while I'm